Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 259 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on May 13th, 2025. How are all you wonderful folks doing? Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Very busy, but that's a good thing, I think. We have quite a lot to cover today. First, we'll get into the technical discussion for the Otter Creek Labs Infinity. Yeah, the subsonic 300 blackout data and analysis that was published on April 30th. We will dig into the technical discussion for that. I trust many of you have had time to digest it, so this is a good time for that. After we go through that report, we have two new technical reports being published today with this episode. That's right. We're going to talk about those as well. They are for two silencers from a company called Sylvan Arms. First up is the SA30TI, which is a 30 caliber silencer tested on 308 bolt action. And then we'll introduce the SA223TIS, which is, you guessed it, a dedicated 5.56 silencer. And that one was evaluated on the 14.5 inch M4A1 mid-length gas system. Okay, so one technical topic and two intro topics. Okay, seems like a good time. So let's get into it. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and we're glad to have you. There are timestamps, and I know you're thinking of skipping this. You're thinking of skipping these ads, and I understand. We do have a slight change to one of them to help you save some money if you want to stick around. But if you don't, that's cool too. Use the timestamps to skip to anything you would like in the episode, whether you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes, or maybe you just downloaded it from the website. You know, wherever you are, you should be able to skip around at your leisure. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ad reads really quick because these folks help keep this podcast going. This podcast is sponsored by Legion Athletics. As I always tell you, nothing you do, exercise, sports, or anything is worth doing without consistency. You have to do things all the time if you want to be good at them, and Legion Athletics can help you with that. And they have whey protein, pre-workout, post-workout. They have a lot of what you need. When we first partnered with Legion, they weren't even selling creatine, and now they are, creatine monohydrate. And the crazy thing about that is I think creatine monohydrate is getting more popular now. It's probably the most studied sports supplement that we have, and I've always used it. It's awesome. And the announcement I have for you, and we were actually just notified of this, I think last week, late last week, they let us know. They have an upgraded discount code. So now when you use the code word PewScience, it gets you buy one, get one, 50% off on your entire shopping cart on your first order. So that's pretty crazy. And furthermore, now instead of a net 10% cash back when you keep using the code forever, you actually get a net 20% cash back every time you use the code going forward for that PewScience code. So that's pretty awesome. I would like to let you know that. I know a lot of you use Legion supplements because maybe you're a drug-tested athlete and you need to buy from a company you know what's in that sells things with clean ingredients, and that's Legion is one of those companies. It's one of the reasons we partner with them. So I know this is important to a lot of you because you actually get all of your supplements from there like I do. So I just thought I would let you know. Okay, cool. Podcast is also brought to you by Silencer Shop. They've done a lot for the silencer industry, a lot for consumers, a lot for dealers. If you are a new dealer looking to get started in the space and you don't want to hold a lot of inventory, Silencer Shop is an option for you, okay? Your customers can use their kiosk and do their fingerprints and photos electronically all in one place. It will help cut down on errors. It will help to simplify the silencer purchasing process. You get a money-back guarantee, which is pretty rare, so you don't pay any transfer fees. The paperwork errors are low. It's just you and your silencer with no drama. Truly a silencer ownership simplified. And I know a very popular Silencer Shop dealer is Top Gun Range out of Houston, which also sponsors this podcast. Kyle and his crew have been with us for quite a long time, and they're genuinely good people, and they're actual gun guys. They're actual silencer guys, and girls. Like, they don't just sell stuff. They actually use them, which is, in my opinion, even more important, frankly. So if you're just if you're in the Houston area that we're checking out, In addition to having a 15-lane indoor range, which is pretty nuts, they have the largest firearm rental fleet in the entire state of Texas, and you can actually not only rent pistols, rifles, and shotguns and machine guns, you can also rent silencers, which is, again, pretty important. Okay, check out their inventory at topgunrange.com. Call them or DM them at Top Gun Range on Instagram or whatever. Kyle will talk to you and tell you all about everything. Chances are, if you need it, they have it. Also, the podcast is brought to you by Capital Armory. It's very important that you as a silencer consumer understand that silencers are in super high demand right now because ATF wait times are low. Because of that, you're going to have trouble getting silencers that you want sometimes. So you having options as a consumer is very important, and Capital Armory is definitely here to help you with that. They support Pew Science pretty publicly, which we really appreciate. They actually endorse the use of Pew Science data, which is very important because Capital Armory is a very large dealer and they have a responsibility to hook their customers up with good products. So Capital Armory spreading our data is an endorsement that they actually believe in the effort. And so we appreciate that about Capital Armory, and that's why we accepted Capital Armory sponsoring us. Okay, we take that seriously. And something else that is really cool about Capital Armory is that if you live in one of the 42 states where silencers are legal, you can order a silencer in your living room, sitting on your couch, and get the silencer delivered to that same living room. They will deliver silencers directly to your door, which is nuts, especially if you work nights and you can't get to a gun store. I think it's awesome. All right. It's really that easy. Capital Armory, silencers shipped directly to your door. Finally, this podcast is brought to you by the Pew Science Laboratory. Who's that, you might ask? Well, I run it, so it's where I work. I'm the technical director of the lab, and the interest of public education. I have continued to make the decision to sponsor this podcast, keep doing the podcast, and run the public research effort. We don't need to do that. We could just only do testing for clients and be a private lab like so many other labs are. We decide we want to keep it public too, which is very rare for test laboratories. And our goal is to push the silencer industry forward one test at a time. You can visit our website at pewscience.com for the suppression rating. It's the simplest, most accurate hearing safe rating for suppressed small arms. It's based on true human inner ear response of the entire gunshot from before combustion takes place all the way until all the combustion is gone and all the mechanical operation from the weapon system has ceased. No one else does it like us, man. I promise. Pew Science is the home of the silencer sound standard. 7 sections, the most in-depth and accurate and actionable silencer data and analysis in the entire known universe. And it's all available to the public 24/7 at pewscience.com. And you can support it. Excuse me, you can support the podcast, you can support Pew Science, you can support all the public testing we do by joining with the membership at pewscience.com. That's right, you can. You can even donate. If you're not into recurring things, donate. That's cool. There's a donate button on the review page, on the podcast page, whatever. And if you don't want to give any money, you don't have to. All you got to do, you just spread the word, man. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Give a like and subscribe or a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. Just let folks know that silencers and guns are awesome. Okay, now that we can normalize the use of suppressed small arms. All right, it'll be awesome. I was planning on 3 topics. How about this? How about we start off with a quick mention of another podcast that I just attended a month ago, and I think was informative for hunters. So first, we'll go over topic 1, talk about the Hunt Backcountry Podcast. We'll go through topic 2, which is the Otter Creek Labs Infinity on subsonic 300 blackout tech discussion. Then we'll hit topic 3, which is the Sylvan Arms SA30TI in Article 6186 that's published today. That's an intro. And then topic 4 will be Article 6187, which is the Sylvan Arms SA223TIS on 14.5-inch M4, which is also an intro topic. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and just super quick topic and topic 1 at a time of 9 minutes and 18 seconds. Okay, very good. Just one moment. Okay, yeah, topic 1. Big shout out to Mark and the Hunt Backcountry Podcast. Mark invited me to speak with him a while back about the title of the episode is Suppressor Science, Selection, and Sound with Pew Science. And this was in sort of a hunting-centric fashion. this discussion. It's really off the cuff. We just started talking, and he asked me questions, and I answered them, and it was fun. So please check out episode 523 of their podcast when you can. It was a pretty good time. I think those of you who listen to this podcast all the time might already know about the things we spoke about, especially if you've listened to this podcast for a long time. But if you're a backcountry hunter like Mark, this might help you. Or maybe if you're just a hunter in general and use bolt-action rifles with silencers outside, like in actual use, it might help you. So this is, I don't want to turn this into a huge thing right now. This is just a quick shout out to Mark and the XO Mountain Gear team. He has a company called XO Mountain Gear, and actually the podcast is like hosted on their website, right? Their podcast, again, is called the Hunt Backcountry Podcast. Quite a lot of people listen to it. I'm told it's a pretty popular thing. I actually did not know about XO Mountain Gear or the Hunt Backcountry Podcast until Mark reached out to me. It turns out he's a longtime Pew Science fan. And so he was a really nice person. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I'm sure I'll do his podcast again. Because it was really cool. And I was told that people have been getting a lot out of the episode. That's really cool. Again, I will put a link to that podcast episode in the show notes, so those of you who want to can go listen to it and can give his show some love. Okay, that would be great. All right, thank you, Mark. If you're listening, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Okay, topic 2. We'll move into this at a time of 11 minutes. And 37 seconds. Okay, very good. So this is Sound Signature Review 6185. Let me close this other stuff I had up because I was trying to tell you about Mark's site. Yeah. Article 6185, the Otter Creek Labs Infinity with subsonic 300 blackout. Right. This is the Q Mini Fix 8-inch barrel proving ground that you're all familiar with that follow our 300 blackout testing. We've been using that from the beginning, as you know. And a lot of people want to know, well, the Infinity is so versatile. How does it handle subsonic ammunition combustion out of a pretty short barrel? This is a lot different than what you saw with the supersonic rifle test, right? With the different end caps. And so a lot of people want to know, well, how does its performance compare with some older designs? How does it compare with some purpose-built 300 blackout silencer designs, of which there are many? And so this is the technical discussion that we're a couple weeks late on, but we're still here. Okay, 1 second. I don't know what it is. I need to drink a lot of water today. Okay, so we're using that cliche. We're circling back to the Infinity. Oh my gosh, man. We are. Okay, so it's been a minute. So we published this subsonic 300 blackout evaluation back on April 30th, and the accompanying introductory discussion was done on episode 257 of the podcast, which was also published that same day concurrently. So we're now on episode 259. We are lagging 1 episode behind in our typical schedule. So you have had a full 2 weeks to read and digest the Otter Creek Labs Infinity report. So that's good. Yeah, so I hope many of you got a chance to do that. During the intro talk, we went through the broad strokes of how you can really use the suppression rating dose chart to look at personnel risk. And we went through different examples, not only of using the ranking section and the color-coded risk metrics for subsonic 300 blackout on a bolt gun, but also for bolt guns with 308 and even semi-automatic systems with 5.56 or 9mm or 22, things like that. So I think everyone now has a pretty good feel for the big picture. Like, the 10,000 foot view when it comes to personnel risk from these systems. I think that was the point. That was the point of that discussion for you. And maybe a refresher from some of you that have forgotten that the suppression rating is actually a risk metric. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to move more into the technical report specifically, and we'll walk through the performance details of the Infinity with its solid 7.62 end cap on an 8-inch barrel 300 blackout bolt gun with subsonic ammunition. And if you want to know more specific details about the Infinity, those have been covered ad nauseum in several other reports and podcasts already, so I encourage you to listen to those as well. This will be the 300 blackout centric technical discussion, okay? So go ahead please, and pull up the technical report if you are able. If you're driving, please don't do that. But if you're on your phone or in front of a computer not driving, you can pull up report 6.185. There's a link in the show notes to the free report. If you are a member, please log into the website and pull up the full member report because it's just better. It has more information. There's no ads. Okay, we'll start at the top. Bottom line up front, 53.8 suppression rating at the muzzle. That is 1 meter left of the Infinity's end cap, 1.6 meters above the ground in the true free field, okay? Mil standard. You get 58.5 suppression rating, 6 inches right of the shooter's right ear. Yeah, that brings us to a simplified composite suppression rating of 60.1 on the 8-inch barrel Q mini-fix bolt-action rifle with subsonic 300 blackout ammunition from Discreet Ballistics. Shout out to David and his team there at Discreet Ballistics. They make ammunition in Wyoming now. I don't know if you know that. A couple of years back, they made the move from New England to Wyoming, which I would say was a wise choice for their business. So we went over this last time, but you're getting into a suppression rating zone at both the muzzle and at the ear where folks might be tempted to forgo hearing protection a lot of the time, right? So let's talk about what makes a silencer tick in this specific combustion regime that might actually allow you to do that. Now remember, the Infinity is basically a machine gun silencer that is adaptable to run on whatever you want to run it on, right? 30 caliber and smaller. But now we're asking it to do super ninja quiet time on a 300 blackout bolt gun with subsonic ammunition. So you are probably asking yourself the question, well, is it going to hang with the rest of the pack? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So if you have the article up and we were looking at that main suppression rating graphic, go ahead and scroll down to the blast overpressure histories from the free field measurements. Right, that's gonna be figure 1 that you're all familiar with. Okay. You have 2 things in figure 1. You have figure 1A and then you have figure 1B. So please turn your attention to figure 1A for a moment because I want to make sure you see something very specific. Notice how the black curve in figure 1A, which is shot 1, is very dominant in your view there. And what you can do is you can click on that figure to make it bigger if you like, and you can see a little better, make it bigger. Or you can zoom in on your phone or your tablet, whatever. You see how the black curve really stands out to you, doesn't it? That is an immediate window into what we call first round pop or FRP. And notice it's not just happening like in one spot on the plot, right? It's not just in one spot. It's not just happening at one moment in time. No, the entire early time blast pressure history is elevated in both pressure, in the positive phase, and in the negative phase. You see that in the positive, and it's going positive and negative, and it's standing out in both of those? Wild, right? Yeah. And that's just from the free field blast overpressure data. You can see that we're not even I haven't even given any numbers, for the decibel. You don't need to know that. You just look, qualitatively. This is blast physics, and you should be able to tell this qualitatively just from looking at the quantitative data in this manner. Okay, so now let's take a little bit closer look in figure 1B. Okay, that's what that is. It's just zoomed in early time. And now you can see some really interesting things happening. The FRP jetting, you see how the black curve, it starts to jet really, really severely in super early, and it's happening very often, and it keeps happening. It's a word used in the annotation there in the figure is persistent. It's persistent FRP, and what is that? Well, I mean, or why would it be behaving like that in that way? Well, this is actually a consequence of the Infinity's design. The same features of the Infinity that let early time flow rate remain very elevated, which is a really great thing on many platforms, those same features actually also give the input blast loads from the muzzle access to significant regions of the silencer, and then that combustion simply is not quenched later in time due to the way the Infinity works. So what happens is you get an output during the first shot that's a result of the combustion running wild with extra oxidizer. It's running wild. It's actually able to continue to trip to that deflagration throughout the silencer. That oxidizer supports the fuel being burned over a longer duration. The air in the silencer before you shoot is doing that, and in the Infinity it keeps propagating. And what I just described to you in a technical way is the definition of first round pop and first round pop propagation specifically. And that's why also in figure 1B, you can see how the blue curve and the red curve, which are basically right on top of each other, are humming along in a much more controlled fashion, right? The Infinity hasn't changed in those shots, has it? It's just that when the really hot muzzle blast gets to the same regions of the silencer, there's no longer enough oxidizer to continue the combustion chain. You now have an oxygen deficient atmosphere. Yeah, the silencer cavities are filled with gas. They're filled with combustion byproducts, though. A lot of gases, but not a lot of oxygen as a percentage in those gases. Yeah, where'd my moles of oxygen go? Well, they were consumed in the reaction. So keep in mind, these gases entering the silencer are doing so at tremendously high pressure, right? And very high heat, and also very, very high velocity. These gases are traveling supersonically. So, just because the bullet is subsonic doesn't mean the gases that escape after the bullet leaves the barrel are subsonic. No, they're supersonic. They're moving really fast. They have a high Mach number, actually, and they're ready to party. They are. A really good way to see this outside of pressure space is, of course, to move to impulse space in figure 2. So let's do that. Okay, move to figure 2. Here we see the result of the blast overpressure propagation over time, building momentum in the free field. This is the resulting momentum transfer potential of the waves. Another word for that is impulse. And here you can really see the FRP run away. Oh, wow. And if it looks like it's significant, that's because it is. Yeah. But the really positive thing here, or the really positive thing happening, is that after FRP, the impulse is very consistent. So that shows the wild nature of the first shot from the Infinity is not caused by some kind of unpredictability, and it's not caused by some unstable state in the silencer. No, on the contrary, the silencer is doing its job. It's just that the first shot runaway is purely due to oxidizer and the way the combustion chain is managed in the Infinity with that much oxidizer present. Okay, so, and that's good to know because it's not always the case, of course, post FRP. And I would say that a very important nuance here is that the Infinity is a high flow rate silencer in early time, and it can also be a high flow rate silencer in late time if you add a vented end cap. Okay, now this tested with the solid end cap. So by using a solid end cap in the subsonic 300 blackout test, you're only taking advantage of its early time flow rate, and you're restricting downstream flow to increase suppression. That's purposeful. So that FRP runaway happens in this particular case really due to the way the Infinity gets its high early time flow and the way it's connected to the later stages of the silencer. It's inherent to the design. You can't fix that unless, of course, you were to purge the silencer with a non-reactive ablative medium, but before the shot, like if you put some kind of alcohol or water inside it, or maybe in carbon dioxide or something. So as shown in the article, there, if you scroll down below those figures, there are links to other reports, other technical reports for the Infinity that we've published. And if you look through that list, of course, the silencer has been evaluated on 308 bolt action with both its solid and vented end caps. It's been evaluated on the 5.56 Mark 18 with several end caps, and now, of course, 300 blackout in this report, which is pretty good. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 total studies. So now you have a really good picture of what the Infinity can do, don't you? You kind of know how it behaves in a lot of different combustion regimes, and the associated hazards, which is probably more than you know about a lot of silencers. Isn't that cool? So big thanks to Otter Creek Labs for funding all that research. That's significant. I think it's a huge. I mean, sure, it benefits them, but I think it really benefits the industry to understand how the Infinity works. I just as an aside, I cannot imagine being a silencer manufacturer and a competitor and not reviewing this analysis. I can't imagine. Like if I made silencers, I would be paying attention. Certainly, most certainly. Stepping through the article, just so you know, and there's a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to read it all to you right now, but I just want to give you some highlights. If you step, there's a technology note to help you understand what it does, but also research notes 1 and 2 give you very technical, formal explanation of what I just explained to you with regard to FRP. If you need to go back and read that. Now, as far as comparisons go, I think probably for 300 blackout subsonic use, you're going to be comparing the Infinity performance to a lot of silencers because of where it's sitting, and some silencers just aren't that similar, and the Infinity is going to be walked all over pretty hard. And really what I'm talking about is like things like the big gas traps, like, you know, the Anthem series, the Mach series from Liberty Precision Machine. You know, you've seen those from Pew Science on 300 blackout recently. Those are really going to outshine things like the Infinity here. That's just something you should understand as, you know, if you're studying silencer performance. Now, when you look at other staged hybrids, though, which would be more in taxonometric class to the Infinity and how it behaves, you would be looking more at things like the CAT ODB, which I think is more of a fair comparison to the Infinity. Now, the ODB does outperform the Infinity, but I think it's a better comparison. It's a more fair comparison. Okay. Because of the nature of the silencers and their intended use. Now, a really interesting thing is when you start to look at really primitive stuff that was actually designed to be used on subsonic 300 blackout. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because just going back to the ODB for a second, like, you know, the Infinity has a high early time flow rate, but you can vary the late time flow rate with multiple end caps. Well, the CAT ODB has a high early time flow rate, but it has an inherent high late time flow rate too, but it can still suppress. The ODB is like it's basically something you don't have to touch and change, and it still does crazy stuff, which is one of the that's one of those magic surge bypass silencers that just blows your. If you're a silencer guy or girl and you study the surge bypass silencers from CAT, they're just weird. They do things that you wouldn't think would work the way they do, but they do, which is kind of cool. And so the Infinity can do some things like that too, but and the way Otter Creek did that was, well, they had to make it modular. They had to make it so that you could change the end caps. That's fine. But when you go back to things that were designed for 300 blackout, like back in the day, and, you know, you go away from some of these staged hybrids like the Infinity and the ODB, and you go more into conventional designs, you start to look at things like the Q Half Nelson, the Q Trash Panda, and you look at the Infinity, and you put the Infinity against those Q silencers, and what you'll see, and this is objective, okay, what you'll see is the Infinity is actually outperforming those silencers in pretty much all aspects. And the Infinity is outperforming those silencers in first round pop, in back pressure, in suppression, and you know what, to get a leg up on the Infinity with that type of design, you got to go big, you got to go full Nelson, right, to be able to make those types of designs do well with this cartridge, because it's not like a Liberty Precision Machine advanced gas trap. Those Q designs they're very primitive. They're very primitive, and you got to go real big to do well with 300 blackout. Okay, subsonic 300 blackout. But once you do get really big, I mean, of course, the full Nelson is an incredible 300 blackout silencer, as we know, and it still sits to this day, at least on today's May 13th for me, May 14th for you. At least today, the full Nelson is on top, but I wouldn't get too comfortable there, right? I mean, this, it's only a matter of time. It's been up there for years, but it's only a matter of time. There are other things too that obviously beat the Infinity with 300 blackout. Like, obviously, that would be like the Surefire 300 SPS, which you would expect it to beat the Infinity on 300 blackout. It's literally a purpose-built 300 blackout silencer. I mean, you would want it to, but there are high flow rate things that the Infinity completely crushes, right? Of course, like, Huxworks stuff, SIG stuff, like newer SIG stuff, not the older SIG stuff is incredible. The SRD is really good, but the newer SIG stuff is like really loud. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. I would say one of them, moving to some other comparisons, I would say one of the most valuable comparisons for a lot of folks looking at these smaller companies would be the Diligent Defense Enticer S and the Infinity. Otter Creek and Diligent are very small companies, and I think the entire Enticer S, it's longer than Infinity, but it's louder than Infinity in this combustion regime. And I think the Infinity has its number, and I think it's more advanced. Well, we know it's more advanced than the Enticer series, right? And we know it's lower back pressure than the Enticer series, and we know it's quieter with this cartridge. And now with 308, not the same sport, but with subsonic 300 blackout, you can see this. So you're shooting this silencer on a bolt gun. You're going to hear the FRP on 300 blackout. There's no way around it. You're going to be subjected to that. If you're a Pew Science member, if you ever, this is important. If you're a Pew Science member, and if you ever needed an illustration of why peak dB means nothing, look at figure 3A and figure 3B in the report, in the member section, and then read research note 6. I mean, again, you're seeing FRP act completely out of pocket compared to the other shots, and it's way more than just during one moment in time. That should be direct evidence to you. Direct technical evidence that's like super easy to understand, in my opinion. So you scroll down more, skip the member stuff because we're talking to the public right now and they can't see it all, although they should. It's really cheap per month. Hint, hint. No. You scroll down to the public part where it's figure 6, which is the big bar chart. It's a really good comparison tool, guys. Here's where you're going to see that the Infinity is hanging pretty well in the pack for the most part. Again, to get quieter, you're going to have to go more advanced. You're going to have to go traditional gas trap, or you're going to have to go longer, right? I think for the back pressure, for the flow rate, for the adaptability, I think the Infinity's doing pretty well. Again, if I had to pick one model that is sort of doing things in a way that outdoes the Infinity, it's probably the Cat ODB, but different type of silencer, and they swing at each other, right? They trade punches really on a lot of stuff. I'd see outside of those two silencers, a lot of the stuff on the chart that's higher performing is conventional tech or bigger, or longer. And man, I would say like sometimes I think folks forget about the Surefire SOCOM 300 SPS. Those of you who are familiar with the RC2 series, which is like the copy of the Ops Inc. silencers, like the RC, the 556 RC2, the 76 RC2, the Mini 2s, everything. The Surefire 300 SPS is completely different. The baffle designs are actually, it's designed for subsonic cartridges. It's completely different than the Ops technology that went into the Surefire silencers. So if you look at a 300 SPS and you look at the baffles, you'll notice the shapes are much more similar to curved cone mill cuts type stuff. I mean, they're not exactly the same, but they're way more similar. And it's an old silencer. It's a heavy silencer, and it's long. But if you're a Surefire guy or girl and you love some good subsonic 300 blackout suppression, the 300 SPS is still out there. You just got to ask yourself, well, what's it going to do on semi-autos, right? Is it going to gas you out? And I think that's where stuff like the Infinity and the ODB and other advanced designs like the Hyperion series and the Helios QD, actually, which is not on the chart, I think stuff like that is going to start to really walk away from the pack compared with the primitive 300 SPS stuff. Because 300 SPS has super high back pressure. So anyway, I'm looking forward to us growing this 300 blackout database. I really like when we can get guns running quiet. And that's the whole point of 300 blackout, to be quiet and, super when you want and subsonic when you want. And the whole point of the blackout designation that AAC invented back, whenever Robert Silver's invented 300 blackout. He was the one who adapted 300 Whisper to specifically run 300 blackout. And actually the way Robert Silver's invented 300 blackout when he was at AAC was like you wouldn't even be able to chamber a 300 blackout cartridge in a 5.56 chamber if they had followed the drawings that he made, right? But now people have accidental things going on because the cartridge isn't made right. It's interesting. A lot of people don't know who invented 300 Blackout, but it was Robert. Shout out Mr. Silvers if you're listening to this. I was able to speak with him a few months back. We met for lunch. He's a good guy. Overall, I'm happy that there are more hybrid designs coming to market. I like hybrid silencer designs. I think they're cool. I think they're the future. And we've been doing this for 5 years publicly, and I've been shooting silencers for a very long time, and seeing progress in the market and having a front row seat to this is incredible. And I'm very pleased, and I think consumers should be incredibly pleased, not only for the fast wait times, but for the technology. I think that's really cool. And I really like the innovation. I think consumers are winning in a big way. I think it's really cool. We've talked about the Infinity ad nauseum, and like it's a multi-stage design. It's adaptable with different end caps. It's cool. I think it fits into the market in a big way because I think there's plenty of room in the market for very advanced things. And so I would say, again, maybe some of you get tired of me saying this, but I want to thank, again, Otter Creek Labs for trusting us to perform this work. I do think the Infinity is an interesting silencer. I don't think it's the last you're going to see of the Infinity from Pew Science. I think there's going to be more to come. And so please stay tuned in the future for that. And so, one second. I don't want to go too far one direction, and always everything in balance, right? And so I have been mentioning really new hybrid designs, of course, because they're new and exciting. But also, sometimes, at least for me, and hey, take it or leave it, this is my opinion. At least for me, it's cool to like maybe harken back to a time when silencer tubes were smaller, when they were more plain looking, when they were smooth and black, and maybe they look pretty classy. And I'm kind of a purist, and I've spoken about that in the recent past. Do I miss that sometimes when silencers were more simple? I mean, I do. Actually, I do miss simpler times. Just sometimes it's a little bit nostalgic, but also it's just kind of utilitarian in a way. Just as a silencer person, I'm sometimes I miss those days, and it just so happens we do have an interesting. We have there are actually several interesting examples of that. It just so happens that there are a couple. Excuse me. There are a couple being produced right now in the market that we had a chance to recently evaluate, and it's from Sylvan Arms. Yeah, so we're going to get into that right now. Topic 3 at a time of 37 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay. Yeah, so this is interesting because, this is actually Article 6.186, Sylvan Arms SA30TI with supersonic 308. It's a class. I guess in all aspects, it's a classic design, smaller diameter. It's got a simple and secure mount. It's a 30 caliber silencer, and this is the intro topic because we're publishing the white paper for this literally today with this episode. So this actually is interesting. So let me just introduce this globally. So it's an interesting group of silencers, at least to us here at Pew Science. And the reason is, there's technical reasons for this. The reason is, if you're familiar with our research pedigree, and if you've been following all of this from the beginning, you would know that the Pew Science Lab started as a way for me to test and analyze the performance of my own silencers to figure out what the heck was going on with them. Okay? I had simply become hoodwinked too much, and let me tell you, if you push a man far enough, he might just push back. And that's what I did. Okay? The reason this is relevant is because throughout our journey here at Pew Science, we've characterized a wide variety of technologies. Heck, we just got through discussing a multi-stage hybrid, on the previous topic of this episode with 300 Blackout. And you'll find if you go back far enough in the rifle silencer pedigree, most everything was conventional cone stuff, and specifically a special subtype of cone. Remember the curved cone or the curved and stepped cone baffles with a mill cut? Yeah, think all the rugged stuff. Think the silencer co stuff. Think SWR stuff without a coax element, guys. Countless other copies and iterations of the Omega baffle and the curved cone mill cut stuff that Joe Godini did, right? Shout out to Joe. The curved cone mill cut baffle in various iterations and offshoots in modern times is one of the most prolific baffle designs in silencer history. Okay, and you can make them with steps, you can make them curved, but at the end of the day, there's a basic suppression mechanism that takes place. The Sylvan Arms silencers are examples of this, and they go classic, not only in technology, in the type of technology, but in size. These silencers are less than 1.5 inches in diameter, and they're rifle silencers, okay? A little over 1.4 inches, actually. If you measure them, I used calipers. Speaking of classic, the tubes are grade 9 titanium, and they're smooth black. And I can't tell you how many people appreciate that. Do some folks think it's boring? Yes. Do all of us think that? Absolutely not. Don't get it twisted. There are a lot of people that use silencers. Now, not that, if you're interested in the Pew Science research, you know it's not a beauty contest, but it's worth mentioning, and you'll see that in the photo. I'm going to publish a photo with today's episode to show you the silencers. Now, another thing you can notice with these Sylvan Arms silencers is their mount system. The silencers are offered in direct thread models too, which is fine, but the models we tested have their QD mount, and I got to tell you, I'm always skeptical of these. It's actually better than a lot of mounts we've used in the past. It's simple and it works. You literally screw the silencer onto the mount. The mount has really coarse ACME threads. Then you have this ratcheting pawl that clicks. Think like old AAC miter mount, but actually more simple and probably last longer. There's a ratcheting pawl that clicks, and once the taper engages, it actually, there's a taper, and then it's on there and it can't come off, also because of the pawl. So now, I don't know. I don't know this for sure, and I probably should have checked. I might have talked with them about it, but I can't remember. I'll have to check with them. But I would think the pawl metal is softer than the mount metal. So if that pawl were ever to wear out, because you want the pawl to be softer than the mount, right? That's what you would want, and because you can actually hammer out a little pin and replace the pawl. That's a replaceable part if you ever needed to. So if it were ever to wear out, I'm looking at you, old school AAC, you can just replace the pawl. Pretty simple, pretty secure. And in our testing, the gas seal on the mount itself worked dandy. I took a photo after it. I was like, oh, it's actually completely sealed perfectly. So that was actually a pleasant surprise. Whenever we see mounts like this, we're like, I don't know if this is going to work. But it did. And I was like, oh, that's refreshing. Let me tell you something. There is nothing better than when you're testing silencers, having a mount work correctly. When mounts don't work right in testing, it is so frustrating. We have a lot of things to do, and the mount not working is it just grinds our gears. I mean, just seriously. Okay. So the fact this worked was yeah, thank God. Because there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. So having the mount go wrong is definitely preventable, and should be preventable from the manufacturer, right? So, and nowadays with everyone making these dang universal back ends, you don't know what trouble you're going to get into. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, so 1.4 inches in diameter. So you got to ask yourself, well, what is the curved cone or the notched stepped cone baffle with the mill cut? What does it do with high combustion volume 308? And I mean, you guys know what 1.5 inch diameter stuff does. Well, you think 1/10 of an inch makes a difference? Yeah. You know what happens when you get a little bigger? We already know that. Got the t-shirt, right? But I don't know that we've examined the system in these particular dimensions on 308 with this particular baffle shape. So I think this is going to be an excellent peg point for you folks. Now, this is a multi-caliber silencer, so whatever you can fit through the bore, you can shoot, but it's not a Magnum rifle silencer. Okay? Go to their website. Read. You should stop at 308. Now, you can do 5.56, you can do 300 blackout, you can do stuff like that. Check out the Sylvan Arms website to learn more. This silencer is built for typical use on typical cartridges. Grade 9 titanium tube, stainless steel blast chamber, and blast baffle. Rest of the baffles are titanium. Okay, This is only the case for the SA30TI. Okay, the 556 silencer is different. We'll talk about that next. Okay, but yeah, so this publication is live right now on 308. It's live right now with the podcast if you're listening after 0700 Central on Wednesday. Okay, cool. So big thanks to Sylvan Arms for trusting us to perform this work. Also, you know what? Huge thanks to Sylvan Arms for asking us to publish this data and analysis. I think any time a manufacturer puts their test reports up to public view and public scrutiny, it should be applauded. Not all manufacturers would do it. The fact that Sylvan Arms is doing it is a really big deal, and I think that really says something about transparency. I think, and I'm just going to say it because I think it's true. I think that when a silencer company allows Pew Science to publish a research report, I think it's one of the most transparent things a silencer company can do. We put the damn contract number in the article, and this is raw data and analysis that they're showing the world. And that's what Sylvan Arms did. I mean, they want you to see exactly what their silencers do, and here we are. So big ups. I'd say it's a big deal to me, and it's very congruent with the intent of Pew Science. It's congruent with our effort. It's congruent with our mission. So our values align. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll look at the smaller version of the silencer in a dedicated 556 model, which is the SA223TIS, in the next intro topic at a time of 46 minutes and 16 seconds. Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, topic 4, Sound Signature Review 6-187. The Sylvan Arms SA223TIS on the 14.5 inch, mid-length gas M4. So this is the shorter, dedicated 556 silencer to complement the SA30TI that we just talked about and introduced. This is another classic small diameter system. It has the same simple ACME thread, that coarse thread mount with the same taper and the same secondary retention, that little PAWL, PAWL, if you're keeping track. Okay, so let's introduce this again. Second white paper published today with the episode, so you can get 2 papers today. And I think this is actually now. I thought the SA30TI was a little interesting. I actually think this one's more interesting to me because it's like, honestly, it's kind of like an RC2, but it's lighter and cheaper, and it has a little bit higher back pressure. Okay, so and I think it's a lot cheaper. I'm not. You know, Pew Science, we don't talk about costs of stuff because we don't sell anything, but I'm pretty sure this is way cheaper. So another thing that's interesting, dare I say, a much better mount than the Surefire mount. I say that objectively. Knowing, you guys know I love the RC2 series. They're cool. I'll use them on my personal guns all the time. There's nothing like putting an RC2 on an HK416 doing full auto mag dumps. It's fun. It gasses you out. The gun's super fast, and it runs like a gun on meth. You put a silencer on a full auto Mark 18, a RC2 on a full auto Mark 18. It's like a go-kart on meth. It's so crazy, but it's so fun. You know I love the RC2. But the mount, no, dude. The mount leaks. It's terrible. Carbon locks. And I don't know. B&T invented it. Whatever. I don't know who you blame. Surefire's the one selling it. I'm just saying this mount on this silencer is better. It has secondary retention, and it also has a taper seal that's actually complete. So that's cool. Now, this silencer doesn't perform like an RC2, but it's actually not too far off on this gun. SA223TIS, 14.5 inch M4. It's kind of like its big brother, the SA30TI. It's only 1.4 inches in diameter, but unlike the SA30TI, this one has all steel baffles, okay? Stepped curved cone implementation in an RC2 size, basically dedicated 5.56 package. You don't get multi-caliber capability unless you want to count 5.7, which you totally could. I mean, honestly, like, might make a really cool 5.7 silencer because it's kind of cheap, and it's cheaper, and it's not Inconel, and you probably don't need that for 5.7. So I don't know. Knock yourself out. It can do 5.7 and 5. It's a 5.56 silencer, right? You can shoot 5.7 through it if you want. In the technical talk next week, we're going to speak about how it works, why it works, things like that. I think you'll find that longtime Pew Science readers and podcast listeners will understand this performance pretty well. We're going to talk stagnation relief. We're going to talk lack thereof. We're going to talk early time jetting. We'll talk blowdown durations. We'll talk FRP. And we're really just going to get back to basics on what supersonic rifle silencer technology does, what it can do, what it can't do, and what to look for when you compare different models. I think the Sylvan Arms silencers are going to bring us back to that baseline. I think in some respects, the Sylvan Arms stuff is a refresher on how some things work that have been around a while. Some technologies that have been used again and again, are being showcased here. And, when you look at those technologies and you adopt them into a total package, if you're a manufacturer doing that, sometimes you're doing it because you want to deliver something at a certain price point. And I think that's what they're doing here. The silencer industry is growing. There's a lot of different types of buyers too. There's often products that fit certain niches. Niches. It's niche, right? Certain roles. I think understanding performance potentials of these products in whatever class they're in, I think is important. So that's what I would say. I think this is interesting. Again, SA223TIS, grade 9 titanium tube. The rest is stainless steel. Same ACME coarse thread, secondary retention with the Paul system on the mount with the taper. Weighs 12.1 ounces. When you add the mount, that gets you to 16.6 ounces, a little over a pound. And like the 30 caliber version, you can get a direct thread too. Yeah, if you're into that. If you want to save a little weight, I think it gets lighter and shorter if you don't need QD. Yeah. Bet you folks didn't think you're going to see some smooth black small tube step guns with a mill cut action in 2025 from us, but here we are, 2 for you this week. Big thanks to Sylvan Arms for this research program. I'm going to repeat something I said earlier. I think it says a lot about a company when they want to show third-party data and analysis to the public. I do. It's huge. Takes a lot of resolve. So if you see them around, if you see Sylvan Arms around at a show or wherever, give them a thumbs up. They did this for you folks listening, okay? So we're going to be back next week to walk through the studies technically. Please use the time in the interim to read through the studies and ask any questions you may have. Okay, so thanks for listening today. I hope the podcast was informative, and the articles will be live at 0700 Central in the morning, okay? So have fun, be safe, and I will talk with you folks again soon. Okay, bye.